Good evening, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me.
Good
My name
evening,
is John
John.
Guidozzi. I am the chairman of the City Council Committee on Finance. Tonight we're going to, this is the City of Providence City Council meeting. It's the Committee on Finance. It's Thursday, February 25th, 2021. We're going to call this meeting to order. And Madam Clerk and Mr. Cook, could you do the roll call, please?
Chairman Guidozzi.
Present, please.
Vice Chairwoman Ryan.
Present.
Councilwoman Castillo. Absent. Councilman Anthony.
Present.
Councilman Taylor is absent. We have 3 present, 2 absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that Councilman Nicholas Nanducci is present and Councilman Pedro Espinal is present.
So noted.
We also have Gina Costa, Internal Order, Billy Kapner, Deputy Chief, at this time. Then we have Kenny Cheverini, City Solicitor. Mr. Cheverini, just for everybody's edification, as you know, this past Tuesday, we had the proposed FOP contract, and there was supposed to be a presentation on the contract. Everybody wasn't ready yet, so it was asked to continue it to this Thursday, and we made that appropriate motion Tuesday. So, Mr. Solicitor, can you just verify that this Thursday night finance meeting is valid meeting, and that we can hear the item on the FOP contract this evening?
As I understand it, and I don't know if the solicitor's on, I don't want to overstep my authority if Jeff is available. I know he was at the meeting, so I don't see him, Mr. Chair. Is he?
No, I don't see him right now, no.
Okay. I was here Tuesday. It was properly posted for Tuesday evening. There was a motion, and the matter was continued specifically to this evening. There is a different agenda that was posted in the interim that did not include the matter, but it was specifically noted that item, the SOC CBA, was continued to this evening, and I believe it's proper to be heard and discussed this evening.
Thank you, City Solicitor.
Mr. Chair, can I just make one other comment?
Yes,
Just for information, this meeting is being held remotely, as we know, consistent with Governor Gina Raimondo's executive order suspending the requirements of the open meeting. I want to make sure that everyone knows that it is perfectly consistent and a legal and appropriate meeting under the executive order of the governor.
Thank you, City Solicitor. Let the record reflect that Councilman Taylor is present as a member of the Finance Committee meeting. And also let the record reflect that President Sabina Matos is present also.
So noted.
Okay, so let's do a couple of items first. Need a motion to entertain a motion for items 1, 2, and 3 to be continued. Have that motion?
Motion to continue items 1, 2, and 3.
By Vice Chair, do I have a second? By Councilman Taylor. Discussion, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Next, we have to take an item out of order and continue it at this time. Motion to take item number 8 out of order and continue that matter.
So moved.
Vice Chair, second by Councilman Taylor. Discussion, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, let us get to item number. Let's take 5 and 6 out of order if we could. Motion to take 5 and 6 out of order.
So moved.
Hearing by Councilman Taylor. Discussion, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Madam Clerk, can you read item 5 and 6, please?
Item 5, resolution authorizing approval of the following change order contract award for contract and supply in accordance with section 21-26C of the Code of Ordinances, Torado Lot Tax, Public Property. Item 6, resolution authorizing approval of the following change order contract award for the contract and supply in accordance with section 21-26C of the Code of Ordinances, Torado Architects, Public Property.
Thank you. And is that both items, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Okay. So we got 5 and 6. Who's going to speak on those 2 items?
It will be representation from the Department of City Property, and they are being promoted.
Okay.
Public property.
All right.
Hello?
You are audible.
Okay, thank you. It just all went down in 1 second, of course. Hi, it's great to see
One
you.
second.
Judy.
One second. Mr. Clerk, can you please
Yeah, sure.
swear the witness in?
Ms. Almonte, and if Mr. Roberts may be speaking, I would prefer to swear both of you in at the same time. If Mr. Roberts, you can unmute yourself. Could you please raise your right hand, and do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Please, Ms. Almonte, Director Almonte, please state your name and title for the record.
My name is Brenda Almonte. I'm the Director of Public Property.
And Deputy Director Roberts, would you please state your name and title for the record?
My name is Demo Roberts, and I'm Manager of Facilities and Operations.
Great, thank you both. Just for future reference, Ms. Almonte, Mr. Roberts, you're going to be called before the Finance Committee, I think, next week or the week after, in which we're going to be looking for you guys to give an update on overall all the city projects, in particular all the council projects and the status of them. So I want to give you the heads up now, so you may want to start working on that process. Internal Auditor Gina Costa will contact you tomorrow to give you more specifics on what the committee is looking for from you two, okay? So with that, thank you both. So with that, let's go to item 5 and 6, and who would like to take it up, please? Who wants the mic?
I can take that. I can take that up. And I
All right.
apologize. I'm having issues with my camera. It says it's on, but it's apparently not on. The first item is a change order in the amount of $108,961.61. It's for Torado Architects for the Jocelyn Community Center. And both that and the second change order in the amount of $35,110 is also for Torado for the same project. These are items that have come to the attention of myself and Demo, working with the architects since we've arrived here at City Hall. There were quite a few invoices that weren't paid to the architect, and right now we've pulled everything together and submitted it for approval by the Board of Contract and Supply, and that's how we arrived here. To be very transparent, this work has been completed, and we are very aware of the fact that this wasn't solicited in the way that we are supposed to solicit work and pay invoices. So we're here just to present these and ask for approval of these items.
Mr. Roberts, do you have anything to add, sir?
No, I totally agree with what Director Almonte stated. We are uncovering these issues, and we just want to make sure that we're doing it.
Okay. Internal Auditor?
Hi, Mr. Chair, thank you. Yes, these were just requests to pays, and Brenda, if you don't mind that I correct you, the $35,000 change order was for the fire station renovations.
Oh, I'm sorry, there was another one, sorry.
So I just to bring it to your attention, as you know, I've been asking for CIP updates, and these fall under CIP projects. And this was my concern in my big push to try and get some type of reconciliation of the projects, just to find out what was going on. So this is part of that whole issue, and this was brought to my attention.
Okay, and do you believe we're going to have more of these events?
I probably, now, so you know, Torado is a state contractor. So I believe they have used this contractor for these specific projects, but I think they exceeded the original bid. I honestly don't think there's a problem with paying these or processing these invoices. I just think that they lagged coming to the board and making the proper changes when they should have.
Has the work been completed? I'm not going to ask you,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts and Ms. Almonte, has the work been completed?
The work within these change orders has.
And you verified that the work has been completed according to what is the requirements? Like they did what they're supposed to and we accepted their work? Is that correct?
Demo can speak to that.
Yes,
So you've inspected it and they've complied to the request and fulfilled their they gave us the product that we paid for, we're paying for, right? Is that what you're saying?
that's what I'm saying.
Correct.
Okay. Internal, anything else to add?
No.
Right. Just for future reference, I guess, Ms. Almonte, will you be putting into effect any type of lessons learned criteria so these events won't happen in the future?
We've created a different system in our office where Demo, being the manager of facilities, will inspect, put together a change order and inspect the change order according to what we need and ensure it's up to standards. And then that would go to our department fiscal agent to prepare to go to the Board of Contracts before any work is begun.
So I would ask you to contact the internal auditor tomorrow, go over that new procedure. Internal auditor has also several outstanding questions on the whole CIP process. So I'd like you to take her through the entire journey of where we were, where we are, and where we're going with that entire CIP program. And tomorrow, I know the internal auditor is going to reach out to you, and this way we can get a better handle on this conversation for next week, okay?
Sounds good.
Thank you. Any other further comments or questions by committee members, council members? All
No,
right, we have a
Mr.
motion-
Chair, thank you.
Thank you. I have a motion to, recommend approval and put it back to the Board of Contract Supplies.
So moved.
Vice Chair, second by Councilman Taylor. Discussion, all in favor? Aye. Items 5 and 6 have been moved forward. I think also we have to now take another item on our item number, is it item number 7?
Can't hear you, Mr. Chair. Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Is mute.
There you go. Whoop, he came back.
Okay. So do we have a motion to continue, take item number 7 out of order and continue it, please?
Yes, so moved.
By Vice Chair, second by Councilman Taylor. Discussion, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Madam Clerk, item number 4, please.
An ordinance establishing a tax stabilization agreement for 49 Westfield LLC.
Thank you. All right. So who we have on this matter?
We have,
I think it's Derek Silva. I think it's,
Nick
Oh, Nick
Heeman and this gentleman,
Okay. Great.
Frederick, will
right.
swear them in and get their names.
Please do. Mr. Heeman and who else?
Have to see what his name is. Mr. Heeman, could you please unmute yourself? I'm not sure if you're actually going to be speaking with Mr. Manigo. Is that his name?
Yes, that's my client, Mr. Manigo.
Okay. Could you please, would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, so help you God?
I do.
Mr. Heeman, would you please state your name, title for the record?
What happened? Yes.
Mr. Heeman, would you please state your name and title for the record?
Sure. My name is Nick Heeman. I am an attorney at Darrow Everett in Providence, Rhode Island. I am here today on behalf of 49 Westfield LLC, and on behalf of the principal of that organization, Mr. Federico Manigo, who's also here as well.
Thank you. Mr. Manigo, would you please state your name and title for the record?
Sure, Federico Manigo. I'm the manager of 49 Westfield LLC.
Thank you.
Okay. So, just for the edification, we have the standard like 20 questions. Were they sent to Mr. Heeman so he can answer them from the clerk's office?
I'm sorry, they were not.
Okay. All right. So,
Mr. Chairman,
if we don't,
I think I have some of that information for you.
Perfect. So if you don't, but just for the future reference for the clerk's office, we know there's some 20-plus standard questions that we always start off these TSAs with. They should be forwarded to anybody who's looking for a TSA, future reference, right? Should give it to them. This way they can present it as part of the storyboard, right? All right. So I believe before we go, Mr. Heeman, I believe you actually have a PowerPoint of some sort, and I think we should enter into the record. And Mr. Clerk, can the committee members view it at this time in the public, yes or no?
It will be visible in 5 seconds. Let me put that up.
So if you could wait one moment, everybody, then let me enter this item into the record, please. All right.
So for the members of the committee and for the public, if you refer to your agenda, which I'll briefly flash on the screen, everyone can access these documents by going to the link that is on the agenda. This link here. This bit.ly BVD 2021-budget, and you'll be able to see the items on that webpage.
Committee members, let me know that everybody has access to it first.
I have access to it, Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair, Councilwoman
I do.
Anthony.
Thank you.
Yep, I have
Councilman
it.
Pat? All right, and then, of course, the other council members, I presume you have access? Councilman Espinal?
Yes.
Councilman Right.
I do, thank you.
Perfect. So why don't we enter this into the record? It's a 10-page document. When identified as Exhibit A to item number 4, which is entitled Redevelopment of the Former Kletzner Industries Complex. The TSA
moved.
presentation of the Providence City
Second.
Council, February 21. Vice Chair makes that motion, second by Councilman Taylor. Discussion, all in favor? All right, thank you, Mr. Dean. Mr. Dean, if then you can begin now your presentation, sir. Please, Mr. Minagio.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. It's good to see everybody tonight. I think we'll cover most of the information that the committee likes to hear about, and we will certainly provide answers to all 20 of those questions on some sort of visual when we have our public hearing. What you do have as an exhibit is a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to have Mr. Manigo sort of take you through in terms of what the vision for this project is. Many of you are probably familiar with Mr. Manigo. He has been working with our office on a number of projects over the past 5 years or so. His focus has been predominantly in the West End portion of the city. He's developed right around $30 million worth of projects in the city of Providence during his time here. He's become a part of our community, a part of our city. And I'm always excited to appear before you on his behalf because his projects really are different. You may remember the first project that he did in the city was on Cromwell Street, the Room and Works project, which was the city's first culinary incubator program. Right now, that project, which was made possible by a TSA, that project has 20 startup companies in it. It's a combination of live and work units, office space. Many of you were able to tour that facility. I know Councilwoman Harris had been many times during the course of the development of that project. Really a great project and a hallmark of what Mr. Manigo and his team do. He also has done the Armory Kitchen, which was the city's first shared commercial space. They have 10 food-related startups there right now. And again, these projects are all live above, work below, sort of community-based developments. The money that they've saved through their TSAs and the various projects have obviously been reinvested into additional projects in the city, which brings us to what we are here to talk about tonight, which is the Westfield project, which is the redevelopment of the Kletzner complex in the West End. This is a big project in scope. It's not the biggest project you're going to see in this committee in terms of dollar value. It's a 2-phase development Part of it will be subject to a TSA and part of it will not be subject to TSA. There are 9 lots which are a part of the TSA before you tonight, and that does include the rehabilitation of the historic mill complex, which is a 70,000 square foot building. But the project itself encompasses 13 lots, some of them brownfields that have been will be redeveloped, cleaned up, and put to new use. Over 2.5 acres. We're talking about a project that's an entire city block. And as Mr. Manigo will show you, is a structure that has become blighted over the years, been a nuisance in the neighborhood. The previous owner stopped paying taxes and was delinquent to the tune of about $800,000. Mr. Manigo acquired this property through the Providence Redevelopment Agency and has worked closely with Mr. Budway and the folks in planning on the project. And these 9 units will be put to productive use. You've got a combination of rehabilitation and a combination of new construction. 62 live-work units, 15,000 square feet of commercial space, which will host the city's first food hall, year-round food hall. So again, trying to build on our city's reputation and our culinary culture in Providence. The other lots will also be redeveloped into residential. So the 9 lots that are subject to this TSA, those are going to be market developments, market rents. There will be 4 additional lots that will have new construction on them, and those will be 12 deed-restricted affordable housing units. Now, that's not part of the TSA, but this project does include that. We did not seek TSA relief on those units. Mr. Manigo is working with the redevelopment agency and the planning department on some other things related to those. But this project will have both commercial, market, and affordable units. So you're getting a little bit of everything in this particular development. The affordable units is another $3 million in development on top of the $8.5 million that encompasses the 9 lots that are before you for consideration of TSA. So really a great project. You have commercial, you're building on an entrepreneurial community, you're redeveloping a blighted structure, and you're returning delinquent property back to productive use. As I mentioned, it's about an $8.5 million project. It should create approximately 100 construction jobs during the construction period, which should start in the summer of this coming year. And upon completion in the commercial space tied to the operation of the food hall, there will be 10 permanent jobs as well. So again, trying to attract some of these startup companies into a space where they have access to equipment that many of them might not be able to afford, because without the projects like this, you need to be able to acquire an entire restaurant. And that is obviously the advantage of these communal type developments that Mr. Manigo has built out. Some of the key numbers here, right now the taxes on this property about $30,000 a year if they were paid. I mean, they're being paid now, but obviously the city wasn't getting them for quite some time. During the course of the TSA, obviously, as you know, the years are all different what the payments are, but the average payment of taxes during the 12 years of this TSA will be $130,000 a year, and full taxation will be somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000 a year. So talking about a savings of approximately 1.1 million and payments of 1.5 million. So really, as your report indicated that was released last week, this is another project that's going to build on these incentives to create new revenue for the city that support our projects. There's going to be a lot of public infrastructure here as well. Mr. Manigo is committed to investing some money in cleaning up and revitalizing the park that is on the corner of Fuller and Warren Streets. This project also entails the planting of over 50 trees across all of these lots, so really going to green up that area. And I think you'll see the need for that when he shows you the slides. So that's sort of the nuts and bolts of the proposal. And I'd like him to show you sort of the before, during, and after photos that he has in his slideshow. That's okay, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Heeman. Next, Mr.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members. I'm not sure. I saw PowerPoint. Was that me or was that correct? Was that everyone had access to the PowerPoint?
That was me, the clerk, sharing the one of the pages of your
Oh, okay.
presentation.
Sure.
Do you want the clerk to do it, or do you want to do it?
I guess I can try with share screen and so can everyone see the PowerPoint behind me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry. So yeah, I'm not sure how familiar the committee is with the site. It's been abandoned since 2014, as Nick mentioned. It's had a very pretty interesting history in the past 6 years or so, where it's had a bunch of illegal uses, including illegal marijuana growth. At one point, there was a flea market. And then in the last couple of years, it's just been abandoned, kind of being a real public nuisance for the neighborhood. The building, the block consists of, it goes from Warren Street, so from Warren Street up to down to Westfield Street, and Harrison Street to the west, and Fuller Street to the east. It's adjacent to the West Elmwood housing development. It's just north of the Sankofa housing development, and it's 2 blocks north of our first project in this area, which was the project on mechanical fabric on Cromwell, between Cromwell and Sprague Street. So this building is another industrial mill building that we're planning on rehabilitating to a bunch of different uses. And yeah, I mean, the building comes with a couple of lots. Sorry. So all these lots, kind of with the numbers on it, that's what encompasses the entire property. The phase of the mill building, subject to the TSA, will include the lots 1 through 9, and these lots the vacant lots will return to landscaped areas and parking areas, and the building obviously will be rehabilitated subject to historic guidelines with the Rhode Island Historic Commission, the federal MPS guidelines. For the building itself, we're planning 62 live-work units and a lifestyle apartments, and over 15,000 square feet of commercial space, and an indoor food hall in the 1-story building that will be offer kind of 4 to 5, potentially 6 small restaurants inside that have access to a common dining area for the public, and this will be open hopefully year-round, and will provide the opportunity in Providence, if you're a visitor, if you're a resident, to go there and access basically in one place to have 4 or 5 different offerings from your latest food startups. So we're excited about that. And then there's the rest of the commercial will also be tailored towards kind of startup businesses. As far as the rest of the property, as Nick mentioned, there's 4 lots that are between Warren Street and Wilson Street, and these 4 lots we're planning deed restricted housing on them. The legal density today, as of the zoning, because those are zoned R3, I think it's 6 family. We're trying to we're working with the planning department as we develop concepts now to potentially increase that density, subject to an amendment or a variance. And I think we're pretty excited the fact that even just right today, with 6 affordable housing single family units, that will represent approximately 10% of the project you have before you this evening. Is 10% of this project of the units will be affordable in some way, which I think it's a pretty nice precedent. I'm not sure if other market rate projects in Providence have kind of reserved or committed to having at least 10% to deed restricted. So we're very excited about that, obviously, because I think there's true need in the community for not just for great space at affordable rates, market rate space, but also for true affordable deed restricted housing. And we're trying to, play a role in that and try to be as, and use these lots for that purpose. As far as, these are the tax lots. So in red is the lots that are subject to the TSA. In blue are the lots that are subject to the deed restricted affordable housing. This building is really, it was a mess when we got involved last year. And I think we worked great with the Providence Redevelopment Agency. When I say that this place was a public nuisance, it's probably an understatement. It was the things we found inside this building and around this building it's just unbelievable. I still have nightmares. So it's almost a year later of just cleaning it up and taking trash out and taking nuisances out, environmental concerns out, addressing those. We're finally at a point where now, as owners, we're securing it and we're preparing to start the construction this summer. These are some of the images of the neighborhood. You have some historic buildings around it that are pretty cool. You have the Armory, obviously, close by. This is the park that's at the corner of the public park that's at the corner of Fuller and Warren. And we discussed with the PRA that we'd like to make some improvements to this park as part of the general larger site improvements we're making to the project. We would like to work with West Elmo Housing to see if there's any specific things that perhaps the kids in the neighborhood need, whether it's a skating ramp or something that we can work with them to address. West Elmo Housing is also developing I think it's a compost facility that's in their plans, which is a lot that is abutting one of these lots. So we're also talking to them about seeing if we can help them with that development. I know it's been in the plans for some time. I think Nick touched on the just overall size of the project. It's a pretty large project. We're looking at about an investment of about $8-9 million in this area. All the sidewalks will be redone as part of this project. So it's a lot of sidewalks. We'll be planting trees on all these sidewalks. So the experience and the general, just the neighborhood, it's a 2.5 acre site. So the entire neighborhood is gonna change dramatically for the better. This is a sample. I proposed just an early version of the proposed site plan. So you can see the parking that's being proposed with extensive landscaping. This does not show the trees on the right of way yet because it's just in development. These are the 9 lots. The current assessment is $780,000. So generating about $30,000 in taxes a year. I think the last time the city of Providence paid taxes on this property was in 2013. So the property has been delinquent since 2000 for the tax year 2014 onward, causing a lot of obviously significant losses to the city of opportunity cost. So it's testament to the hard work the PRA has done to just take this property and try to gear it towards a better use and returning it to the tax roll. And I think as of this year, this property after almost 7 years is returning to the tax roll. So it'll be paying taxes. This is an estimate of the TSA kind of projecting like Nick was discussing. And as you can see, the taxes paid under the TSA over 12 years is $1.5 million. Now I know that it's a hypothetical, but if we didn't have a TSA, we wouldn't be able to do this project, and you would have, you know, if people, assuming people would pay taxes, which has not been the case for the last 7 years, the total value, you know, the value of the taxes paid over the next 12 years would generate about $350,000 to the city. So, you know, it's that versus instead of 1.5 million. And then at that point onward, the taxes being generated to the city are roughly $300,000 a year. These are the 4 lots that we're planning the deed restricted housing on. They're vacant lots right now, and they're assessed at about $50,000 before improvements. So once the improvements, $3 million improvements are made, obviously these lots, even just to the 6-family, will be assessed much higher. So I'm not too familiar with the deed restricted housing. This is the first one we do, but I understand that the property tax will be, as of right, fixed to the assessed value, percentage of the assessed value. So consider the assessed value here being $3 million. You can easily see how, the taxes will be in excess of $100,000 a year, just for these 3.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just to kind of wrap up as a summary, I mean, this is a massive undertaking. Again, I've been in here with projects that are $70, $80 million, but they're just straight up on one lot. As you could see in one of those slides, when Mr. Manigo had all those orange buildings, those are his other projects, and they're all close together. This is where he has committed his development career in Providence. And he does great projects. He does unique projects, projects that bring people into the area, projects that clean up the area. And unlike many of the residential developments, also have permanent jobs and entrepreneurial space to continue to create permanent jobs. So this is the exact type of project that a tax stabilization is designed for. It is not possible without it. And I know from talking with all of you, from being at these hearings, and we were here a couple of weeks ago, and the desire for the affordable housing, this project has that with it on the lots that are not subject to the TSA. So I think this is a great project. We hope that we can have, obviously we have a public hearing at some point that will come up. We hope people will be supportive of it and be in favor of it. And we will certainly listen to feedback from the community. But again, Mr. Manigo is very involved in this area. I know he's talked with Councilwoman Harris about it. I know the council members that sit on the PRA are familiar with Klitzner and the long process to get it back and going. And we're happy to answer any questions that you might have about this project or the overall commitment to this area of the city that Mr. Manigo and his brother have over the years. Thanks to the support that this committee and the council have given them.
Thank you, Mr. Heeman. Just for the edification of my committee members, the public hearing on this is be scheduled, and actually it's going to happen in a couple of weeks. And that's when you'll be able to then do further presentation, and then that's when public comment will come in and they can comment on this project. Do committee members have any questions this time? Councilwoman Anthony?
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Manigo, for your investment in our city. It's a great looking plan. I just have a couple of questions. So my understanding is that your planned area for the affordable housing is not included in the area that's covered by this TSA. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. And then you also mentioned that, you were going to try to get that area for the affordable housing rezoned from R3 to R4. If you're not able to do that, are you still going to be doing the affordable housing?
Yes, ma'am. At a minimum, it's the density right now, and I think it's zoned R3, would allows us with 6 family when you add all the lots together. So it will be six homes. Because of the fact that the lots are adjoining, and you're not dealing with individual lots distributed randomly, I think there is an opportunity to potentially get a little more density without, creating, obviously, I'm not talking about 20 units, but potentially fitting some more efficient single-family homes in those lots that you would otherwise do if you had one lot. So we're looking at that, but at a minimum, we're committing to 6 family,
Okay,
which is what the current density allows us to do.
okay, thank you. That's all I
Thank
have.
you, Councilman Anthony.
Councilman Correa.
I know, can you go to can I go to the full screen so I can see what happens? I can see the folks? Councilman Correa is present also.
He has to put this, Mr.
Okay.
Federico has to take down.
Mr. Menaggio, can
You gotta stop sharing your screen.
could you stop, could you lower your screen?
Yes, sorry about that. Up here.
Thank you. All right. Let's recollect that Councilman Correa is present. All right.
So noted.
Any other comments or questions at this time? Council members, committee members, you'll have more opportunity because you'll have the public hearing. Then of course, after the public hearing, you'll come back before the finance committee, and they can have additional follow-up questions. So just be aware of that, okay? I thank you, Mr. Heeman, Mr. Menaggio. I think it's I think this is another a good example of what we were trying to explain how a TSA works as a development tool. I think one of the most important things is what you mentioned, which was right now it generates, if you can get someone to pay about $30,000 worth of taxes if you're lucky, and of course because it's an abandoned building and it's been laid fallow for a long time, we're not even getting that. And although that if we move forward with this, we'll end up getting more taxes than what's there right now, number one, which is more than $30,000. But two, although we may be foregoing a certain percentage of taxes, that's the city's investment in this project. Because I have a question: is it really easy to get financing for projects like this? Let me ask that question: Is money flowing from all banks and institutions for projects like this at these locations and these types of, let me call it this type of building that you said brownfield and everything? Mr. Heeman, Mr. Menaggio, is there money flowing all over the place for these types of projects?
No. Obviously, with construction costs also rising the past year and a half, it's very challenging. Yes, rates are low, but it's not. It takes time, especially to close these transactions with finding the lender, finding the investors for the tax credit. So yeah, they're difficult projects to take off the ground, and almost impossible without a tax stabilization agreement.
Mr. Chairman, I'll tell you that I was working on a project where, it was kind of similar to expensive, Mr. Menaggio's, but when we were looking at it, even if the council approved a 20-year TSA, which the council does not approve for projects, under, I think, 50 million or whatever the sort of that standard that we've had is, a $10 million project, even with a 20-year TSA, we couldn't get it financed. And so obviously we never brought it forward. So it really, really tough, especially when you're incorporating the historic rehabilitation, which, ups the cost and ups the process. And Mr. Menaggio is experiencing these tough projects, both on the financial side, but also, when you do the TSAs, you also take on the additional requirements for workforce development, and that can have an increased cost. And so you have to balance those two items. So they're very difficult projects, and the city partnership is what makes them possible.
So let me give you an example. And I know we talk about the so if it's so much money, it's so many years. And I think that's something that, in my experience, over the 2-3 decades now, actually dealing with practically every tax stabilization except the horrific ones that the administrations in the past have issued out. They've been extremely successful, and we understood there had to be flexibility in the amount of years of tax stabilization. And I always pause when people want to do a general statement of discriminating based on how big of a value the project is. Meaning, like, if it's only 10 million, it can only be so many years. If it's 50 million, so many years. Because the bottom line is, a $10 million project, a $5 million project can be just as difficult and just as cumbersome to achieve as even a $40, $50, $100 million project, depending on the location. So that to me is very closed-minded thinking, not really understanding economics and the dynamics of development. So this is something that, and I was very pleased by, I've been on numerous councils where we've been willing to be very flexible and understand those elements and bring it into the equation sometimes to make the project work. I noticed that when people get too rigid, it then becomes a disincentive for development to come into the city. And at this time, the last thing the city needs to start doing now is disincentives. I mean, I know we're going to, you know, the federal government's going to pass a $1.9 trillion budget. I know we're going to get, you know, bailout money and all this other stuff, but that's not money for us to just be a spendthrift on. That's money about just paying our bills and keeping the city rolling and hopefully not raising taxes. So, I mean, I just want to say that I think it's great when, you know, this building, it's clearly a difficult building. That's all it is, right? And you talk about brownfields and there's environmental issues involved. And when we have a developer, and clearly, by the way, a proven developer, who is willing to come forward, and by the way, and take a major gamble, because at the end of the day, it's still a gamble, right? If you're paying, what he said, $8.5 million of development money, is that right, Mr. Menaggio? Am I saying that right? I mean, it's still a gamble. There's no guarantee that even after you spend all this money, that the restaurants are going to be booming, that the place is going to be rented, that it's going to turn around like that. And you see that, right? I mean, so I mean, I commend you, and of course, Mr. Heeman, willing to even consider to continue to invest in the city of Providence, because there's not a line out the door over here. I know people they have this idea that there is. I don't know, but there's not a line out the door, and I want to thank you for. By the way, middle of pandemic, economics are tight, very difficult project, difficult building, for gosh sakes. You know, I had a building like this in my ward, and I luckily that I was able to get a storage facility converted into it, because it was just a very difficult building. So, you know, and this is about having residential living, which is pretty exciting, by the way. So, I mean, I look forward to getting more details and information. I know the internal lawyer is going to do her diligence, and then I urge all my colleagues to do their diligence. But I ask you all to keep an open mind, because there is not a line out the door. That doesn't mean we give away the store, but it doesn't mean we turn away people who are willing to commit these kinds of funds and to revamp these types of difficult buildings in our neighborhood. So I ask everybody to do their diligence and to really think in an open mind, not about just for today, but the future of the city. And and the folks that came to the last finance meeting, before that, we had a presentation. And because of the hard work of this council and previous councils for the past almost 3 decades, the city of Providence will be garnering almost $500 million worth of new revenue because of tax stabilization economic program. That is not by chance. It is by design. So I urge everybody to really think about this. I think it's important that we do our diligence, but really keep an open mind about being flexible and understanding the economic times and where we are. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Heeman, Mr. Menaggio.
Thank
We
you,
look forward
thank you, Commissioner.
hearing. I apologize, I may not be saying your name right, but I'd like
Thank you.
consent that a motion to continue this item, because we're going to be here at the public hearing. Mr. Clerk's going to be posting that like next week, the public hearing date. That'll be in a couple of weeks from now, okay?
All right.
Motion
Thank
to
you.
continue
Thank you.
item 4.
All right, Vice Chair, second by Councilman Taylor. Discussion, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. I think it's the last item on the agenda, but it's not appearing on this because it's based on, it was continued from the last finance meeting in which the city solicitor has verified that it was legal and valid to do that. By the way, Robert's Rules of Order allows you to do that, of course. As you know, you can always continue something to a date certain, and that's exactly what this committee did. And the item that we continued to a date certain was to today's finance meeting and today's date, Madam Clerk, can you read that item that we continue to today's date certain? Madam Clerk? Can you please read the item?
I can bring that up, 1 second, please.
And do we have the document?
You can have the document, it should be in front of you.
Okay, Sharon, thank you. And I'll leave this document, these two documents of the public hearing. Do we have it, Mr. Clerk?
It is tentative agreement, Lodge number 3, July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2023.
Thank you. I know we have several people from the administration who are going to present on this matter. I think it's Mr. Mancini, the city solicitor, Jeff Dana, I think, and of course we have Chief Hugh Clements also, and I believe Sarah Silveria, and anybody else from the administration?
Yes, Mr. Perry.
And of course, Commissioner Perry.
Commissioner Perry.
So what I would like you to do, Mr. Clerk, is have all those individuals be sworn in and then identify them for the record, and then we'll go in whatever order. Who's going to take the lead on it? Is Mr. Mancini going to take the lead and then going to go
I will.
on down the line? Okay. So, Mr.
Myself
Clerk,
and the solicitor will take the lead.
Would you all please raise your right hand? Do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Lawrence J. Mancini, Chief Financial Officer of the City of Providence.
Jeffrey Dana, City Solicitor for the City of Providence.
Stephen Parry, Commissioner of Public Safety, City of Providence.
Hugh Clements, Chief of Police, City of Providence.
Sarah? Unmute yourself and please identify yourself.
Sorry, Sarah Silveria, Finance Director, City of Providence.
Thank you. So before we begin, Mr. Mancini, just quickly, a little background. Presently, right now, do we have a collective bargaining agreement in place with our police officers right now?
We do not. It's the contract is expired at June 30 of 2019.
So the contract expired in 2019, and then I guess that state statute then was applied. Is that right, Mr. Solicitor? In which it all the parameters continue until a new one's negotiated. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
So, but for right now, so now it's 2021, and here we are on talking about a contract for our fine men and women of the police force, correct?
Correct.
Right. So can I just furthermore background, how many years would this contract be for?
4 years.
4 years, great. And if it is passed and ratified, it will begin when and end when? Do we know?
Mr. Chairman, it'll be retroactive to July 1, 2019, and will run through June 30 of 2023.
2023? Okay, great.
Correct.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mancini. So why don't you take it from there? Then we'll have the solicitor, Mr. Dana. Then we'll have the commissioner and the chief weigh in at that point in time. Mr. Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, members of the council. Mr. Chairman, thank you this evening. I am joined by my esteemed colleagues, Solicitor Jeff Dana, Commissioner Stephen Parry, and Chief Clements, and Finance Director Sarah Silveria. We, along with the Chief of Staff to Mayor Loza, Nicole Pollock, were instrumental in carrying the negotiations through the entire period of negotiations. Ms. Pollock has previously excused herself this evening due to another commitment, but she was considered the city's lead negotiator, along with the solicitor's office as well as the public safety. Mr. Chairman, I have submitted to you on February 10th a fiscal impact statement along with a fiscal note narrative and an accompanying summary sheet. I will say for the benefit of this discussion, this was a historic negotiation. We had attempted let me just back up for a second. We had begun just prior to the contract expiration in June of 2019 to begin laying the parameters of these discussions. And we had worked steadily through the balance of 2019. When the COVID pandemic began in March of last year, and while federal, state, and city officials decided to limit exposure, and there was a closure of city government on March 13th, out of respect to the workforce, we respectfully suspended those negotiations until a time when it was more appropriate. With that said, and the passage of time, we restarted those negotiations in November and December of this past year. And there were very vibrant negotiations that continued with the original discussions, and we were successful in coming to a predominant agreement by the end of December with some minor details just this past month of January. So the time frame that has passed, while it's more than a year and a half, I want to be clear to the committee that the passage of time, nearly 6 or 7 months, was associated with our agreement of both parties not to conduct negotiations as first responders were involved in the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as other members of government. Mr. Chairman, this contract attempted to make 3 significant points of order. First and foremost, to the men and women in blue, to recognize and evaluate their service and make a determination where we had known that they were paid in the bottom 25% tile of their peers throughout the state police departments, to elevate them to within the top 25%. That was a key factor. Also, to design and implement an unprecedented increase in pension contributions. It would be the first workforce in the city of Providence's work deployment to have an increase in pension contributions in my history and from my memory, perhaps the first ever, maybe in 50 years. And then lastly, but equally as important, seek to avoid arbitration and any resulting costly litigation that may occur during an arbitration. I am pleased and honored to tell this committee that we realized historic changes in those negotiations. While we have a 4-year contract that has elevated the wages of the police members from the lowest 25 to the top 25, we also have contributions that now go from currently 8% to 13.5% at the end of the 4-year contract. Those changes in contributions will have a $31 million future value change on the city's unfunded pension liability, which has a $17 million present value associated with that. The wage increases will act as a significant recruitment and retention advantage. In addition to that, Mr. Chairman, we were also able to secure a major shift in the cost of healthcare away from the city expense and burdened and borne by FOP members. The entire cost of the contract over the 4-year period, after wage increases, after healthcare savings, and after a savings in the pension contribution, will be at $12.1 million, $12,113,028 to be exact, an average of $3 million per year, with the final year costing $3.9 million. It should be worth noted, Mr. Chairman, that all during the negotiations, right through the month of December, when we were pricing the change and the impact of the pension contributions, the increased pension contributions, we were operating under the then prevailing assumed rate of return, which was 8%. During the course of the year and in the latter part of calendar 2020, the finance team, working with our outside actuary and then sharing later with the treasurer and internal auditor, had arrived at a decision by recommendation of the actuary to lower the rate of return from what was then 8% to 7%, a 1 full point reduction in the assumed rate of return. That also was a historic aspect, and while I might digress for a moment, while it had not immediate bearing in these negotiations, it did have impact. Had that not occurred, Mr. Chairman, and had we traveled and continued at the same 8% rate of return, the savings would have been larger. In fact, the savings would have had this contract cost us over the 4 years only $10.6 million. We would have saw an additional $1.4 million of pension contribution savings as a result of those savings. But we did do the prudent thing, independent of the FOP contract. We agreed to the 7% rate of return. That valuation has been submitted. In fact, it was just discussed yesterday at yesterday's retirement board. It's under consideration now by the retirement board and will be revisited, I believe, at the March meeting. But the finance office, working with the actuary, did agree to move forward with a 7% rate of return, and that did have a different bearing on the outcome of these negotiations. As I stated in my opening comments, the result of this had a long-term and also an immediate impact on the pension payment. The long-term savings, $31 million, which has a today present value savings of $17 million. It should be noted that the normal cost of the pension contribution for the police, that means the cost associated with the current workforce on the part of the employer, has decreased by 26% based upon the payroll It would now be a 12.5% payroll cost versus previously 17%. This has been supported by our actuary, Fiscal Consultants, which, Mr. Chairman, for the record, a letter of determination has been attached to this fiscal impact statement and fiscal note narrative that was dated December 18th, that was signed by Ms. Kathy Riley, who is the lead actuary for Fiscal Consultants, supporting these calculations and these changes. With that said, Mr. Chairman, there were other important changes that occurred. As I said, the healthcare changes. If you will allow me the opportunity to go through them. The other more important thing, Mr. Chairman, is that there will be a creation of an Opeb funded trust. Beginning in July 1 of 21, each member will pay $3.85 per week per member, or $200 per year, and that will continue through the end of the contract. The city will do its part, and it will do its best at the appropriate time to put in a voluntary contribution to the Opeb trust. But the essence of the fact that the trust has been created and will be a working instrument is expected to serve us well over the years forward, as other work groups perhaps will be under the same modeling of this contract, if you will, particularly as it pertains to additional pension increases on the part of the workforce. The solicitor will talk about other aspects of the contract, including the mandatory retirement age being increased. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, I can direct your attention to, I believe, what is page 5 of the document that was submitted to you through the city clerk, which begins the fiscal note narrative, and it's a point-by-point pricing of those contract impacts, be it a savings or a cost, starting with healthcare, and given the changes in the medical co-share rates, changes in medical and prescription, changes in dental co-share, and changes in what's basically a voluntary wellness participation program. It also begins at item number 2, showing the salary changes for the police based on the changes in the contract, starting with July 1 of 2019, retroactive 4.5% wage increase, followed by a second and third 4.5% increase in each of July 1 of 2020 and July 1 of 2021, and a 3.75% increase in July of 2022. It's important to note that while the wages are retroactive to the expiration and the commencement of this contract, so too isn't the pension contributions. The pension contribution schedule increases are retroactive to the commencement of this contract alongside the wage increases. There were changes in new hire for salary reduction. Those changes resulted in a $402,000 savings. And then the member contributions. Those contributions will total $6 million, of which $1.4 million will affect the 4th year of this contract as a savings to the employer. With that said, Mr. Chairman, that rounds out the overview of these provisions. I'm happy to answer the additional questions. I've provided the committee with the impact statement, the fiscal note narrative, the fiscal note summary, and the letter of support from Fiscal Consultants that supports the change in the pension and its impact of the pension plan. And I believe the documents have been shared with your internal auditor and city treasurer for their review. And I welcome any questions, and certainly any questions of my colleagues.
Thank you, Mr. Minton. Mr. Clerk, has this package been submitted?
It is actually on the open meetings portal as part of the agenda for Tuesday meeting, so everyone can download all 3 of those items that the TFO cited from that.
So it has been entered into the official record, though? Is it part of the
It
record?
has not been entered into the official record by you at a meeting yet, because we did not hear this item. Although, I'm sorry, it actually has been made part of the record because it's part of the original, ordinance.
Okay.
So we know.
All right, so the whole package is there? All right.
Yeah.
Okay, make sure the whole package is available for the public. One note, everybody, March 2nd at 5 p.m., 2021 will be the public hearing to have the public input on this proposed fraternal order of police contract with the city of Providence. Next, we have, Chief Taylor, and then, Councilman Taylor, and then we have the internal order. Chief Taylor, you have a question, sir?
Hold on. No, actually, I just have comments, because when you look at the figures, because I did some quick figures this afternoon. When you look at the figures, because people say at the 4-year contract with the pay raise, oh my God, it's a lot of money. But when you compare it to other departments, we're still, our Providence police men and women are not paid as much. I went to the end of the contract on each one. So let's say Providence at the end of the contract, I went with just a police officer, is $1,383. Where Warwick at their end of their contract, which is 2021, I believe, is $1,434. So they're already above what our policemen are making now, and they're not into another contract. Same with Cranston. I went just the top four. The top four bigger departments within the state of Rhode Island. Cranston Police Department, $1,332. Again, that's to the end of 2021, I believe. And Pawtucket is $1,243 per week. That's just for a police officer. So when people look at the numbers, it looks like, oh my God, they're getting a 4.7, 3. I don't have the numbers here. I should, before I start saying what I'm saying here. But when you look at the numbers, it looks like, 4.5, 4.5, 4.5, 3.75. It looks like big numbers. But when you actually see what our men and women are being paid, they're being paid less than towns and cities in Rhode Island themselves. And matter of fact, even the firefighters, the Providence firefighters at the end of their contract is going to be making $1,000, just for a firefighter, equal, will be making $1,411. So a firefighter at the end of their contract next year, I believe it is going to be making more than the police department at the end of their 2023. So I just wanted to bring that up when people see the pay, that it looks like a lot of pay, the salary increase. But comparing to other departments, and I didn't compare, Worcester and all those, but I just went within the state of Rhode Island. That's one point. The second point is I'm glad that I'm seeing that the pension reform, I was a little upset, and I know I've talked to the chairman about this. We've discussed it several times, that I believe the administration missed the beat. They're doing it now, but I think we missed the ball a few years back when, especially the fire department, when they did the 5-year deal. And I know the chairman said, and I'll say it before he says it, he voted against the contract because there was no pension reform. But we missed the ball on that because we could have had 150 or more now firefighters paying into more into their pension for the length of that contract, and we didn't do it. So I'm glad to see that we're doing it here. We have to wait another year, obviously, for the fire contract to end and do it there. And we could actually done it with across the board with 1033 and police back when we gave the contracts, because we all know the problem with the pension. But that's all I wanted to say. I'm glad to see that there's increased payments in the pension, because we know how bad the pension is. And I'll have a couple questions probably later, but not now, because we haven't hit that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman, now did you get it? I have internal order first, but do you have a quick question?
Can we get a copy of the agreement before the public hearing?
Yes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Mr. Clerk to have it delivered to every council person's home.
Thank you.
Okay? Have a hard copy delivered. Okay? Prior, okay? Thank you. Internal auditor?
Hi, good evening. I just wanted to say that I did my own little fiscal note, and I do agree with the fiscal note, but I do have one comment. As far as the pension reform, that's great. But at the end of this contract, and when they renew their contract, Larry, suppose they go back to 8%, will the city still realize that $31 million in savings in the pension fund?
Yes, the savings is meant to be through the entire remainder of the amortization schedule predicated on today's balance and the contributions associated with the 4-year contract.
So based on this 4-year contract, to 13.5% gradually over the rest of the, even if they go back to 8% on 7/1.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is that it for internal order? Just first blush, by the way, I think there seems like a lot of good positive movement in this proposed contract. Number one. Number two, this would have been a contract, by the way, Councilman Chief Taylor was correct, I didn't vote for the fire contract. I'm not gonna get into the weeds of that. But the main reason was because the whole purpose was because you can get into a 5-year contract before pension reform, and we did nothing for pension reform, but we can debate that later on, and we missed another major opportunity then. I'm hoping, this is a contract right here that I would have loved to seen it be a 5-year contract, to be perfectly honest with you, and to keep moving forward, because then it would set the pace for the next council. Because I think it will, and also can support this administration, if you're gonna enter negotiations with the fire union next year, to also now get pension reform from them. You have to make a decision. Pension reform has to be a daily, has to be not something that's a politically opportunistic, but a mantra for all city negotiations on a daily basis. So this is, I'm glad to see this is the case. I would think, if I say internal, I know she mentioned that, but I would think the future administration and the future council would be hard pressed to go backwards on pension contribution. If it did, then those council members and that administration probably should not be there. I mean, it just, knowing what we all know now, and that future council and future administration, it would be a travesty for that to happen. But I've seen weirder things. But with that said, I'm sorry, Mr. Mancini?
Mr. Chairman, I would agree, and to your point, and to the internal order, may I say this here, at no time during these negotiations was there any sentiment that what was bargained for would revert backwards. I think that we would all agree that this is the new standard, no doubt in my mind.
And now this is the upswing of that state statute, what's it called, the everlasting law, whatever they call it. So, right, in which contract provisions stay on and on forever until a new contract is negotiated. That's one positive thing in which at least that contribution could continue. I have some further questions, but I want to have the commissioner weigh in and Chief Clement, excuse me, the city solicitor, then the commissioner and the chief, so I don't want to get too deep into it. Can I have the city solicitor, then Councilman Anthony, you have your hand up? Let's have Councilman Anthony, then Chief, then the commissioner. Is that okay? How would you, Councilman Anthony, what's your pleasure? Do you want to hear the solicitor first, or would you talk?
I have a really quick question.
Sure. Councilman Anthony.
When we're reducing the rate of return from 8 to 7%, I know there's a cost associated with that, and I'm not talking about how this is relating to the contract. I'm just wondering if you can just tell me how that's going to be financed and what that amount is.
So, Councilwoman, first of all, good evening. Yes, and they are independent conversations. While there was some nexus of that at the end of our negotiations, the savings could have been large, if you will, as it was priced in the contract, but we would not have achieved the prudence of what we attempted to do by going from 8 to 7%. And that was a responsibility on the part of the administration and finance to consider that significantly. The actuary had highly recommended it. Our outside auditors also said that they would not accept the recommendation less than that, or if we did not, they probably would not have given us a favorable opinion. So the fact of the matter is, how would that be done? The actuary agreed that we could continue with the current amortization schedule at least until 2023. That gives us the opportunity over the next two budgets, 2022 and 2023, to reposition the city's finances and the city budget under ordinary conditions to adjust into the payment. But overall, that payment will change by about another 1.5%, going from 3.5% to 5%. But we feel confident that we could afford that. We've already gotten, by the way, Mr. Chairman and members of the board of Finance Committee, we have already gotten outside stakeholder review and approval and favorable opinion on the moves. State officials have already applauded the move. Rating agencies have already applauded the move, and it's a move that had to be done. I know internally we'd like to look at it if we could go lower, but it's also based on affordability. It's also based on concerns of what our responsibility to taxpayers as well. But to your question, Madam Councilwoman, that's the appropriate approach at this time.
Mr. Mancini, the rate of return has not been lowered, though.
It will be, Mr. Chairman, once it's adopted officially by the retirement board at their next meeting.
Hold on, but it has not been lowered from 8 to, it has not been lowered yet, has it?
Our budgets will reflect a reduction to 7%, yes.
No,
Yes.
but it has not
In a
been
matter of,
lowered.
in a matter of 1 month,
Right.
you will make it, in a matter of
Hasn't been-
1 month, it has
Okay.
not been officially adopted by the retirement board.
Okay, so now, the retirement board is going to make the decision to lower it from, to 7%, is this correct?
It was before the retirement board yesterday, but because members wanted some additional time to think it through, the chairman of the board, Treasurer Lombardi, agreed to put it back on for the March meeting, but the actuary did attend the meeting. The actuary did provide ample information, I believe sufficient information, and I believe the members of that board, yourself included, Mr. Chairman, will come to the same conclusion that it's appropriate to reduce it from 8% to 7%.
What will be the impact, you said, is it $31 million for the unfunded liability? What would
Not
the,
because of the rate of return. The savings as a result of the additional contributions by the FOP will be a $31 million savings over the remainder of the current amortization schedule.
but when you look at the proposal to lower it to 7%, what will the unfunded liability go, from what to what? It's gonna grow, right? How much?
Yeah, the unfunded liability changes by about $200 million on a 1-point change.
Right.
Remember, Mr. Chairman, we have never moved in a
So right now, we're at what, 1.3 billion unfunded liability?
1.2.
1.2, so then by making it going from 8 to 7, we're gonna rise the unfunded liability to 1.2 to 1.4 billion. Is that correct?
No, it was just over 1 billion at 8%. With the 7%, it'll rise to 1.2.
Okay, so we're 1 billion unfunded liability, and by lowering 1% to 7, we're gonna raise the unfunded liability to 1 billion to 1.2 billion, right?
That's correct.
And so the state has whoever the state is, I don't know who in the state is, and I mean, the actuarial, I don't know what that's about. Are they talking about re-amortizing the fund at all?
Mr. Chairman, I think you and I had this discussion here in this format. That would be the last technique that we would use, re-amortization. We would attempt to do every other reform or stability measure that we should do. And then the last thing we'd do is the re-amortization. And yes, that is clearly an option that we should be looking at.
So now, what will be the increase to the city's annual contribution when it looks like you guys are going to add $200 million to it?
So because of the phase-in provision that's going to be allowed by the actuary, no change in the 20, 21, or 22 budgets as we knew it to be already. And starting in 2023, about $1.5 million greater than what was already expected to be.
And did the actuarial plot it out for the next 10 years?
Yes, they have. Yes, they
And
have.
so what does it increase by as the next 10 years? Does it go from 1 million to 2 million to 3 million? What does it do?
Rather than 3.5% per year, it will jump by 5% per year.
So the city's the annual payout would increase to 5%. It's going to tick up 5% every year, correct?
As opposed to 3.5%, that's correct.
And so what does it do for the getting to, in theory, retiring the unfunded pension portion? How much does it tack on years to that?
No, it does not. It does not. It continues with the current amortization.
Does it not, because the city has to commit itself to make those additional payments, correct?
That is correct.
Okay,
That is
all right,
correct.
thank you. All right, so I don't want to get too more, we'll bring that around the horn again, I'm sorry. So, City Solicitor, do you have something you want to say on this matter?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I think both Mr. Mancini's presentation and the fiscal impact statement are very comprehensive and thorough, so my comments will be very brief. I'll echo Mr. Mancini's comment about the lengthy nature of the negotiations. I'd say the primary reason for the lengthy nature of them is that the city was insistent from beginning to end on what Mr. Mancini referred to as historic pension reform. I'll note that, as you know, as I believe many of the members know, if the city is unable to reach an agreement on a contract with members of a public safety collective bargaining unit, those members have a right to send it to arbitration. So I do commend counsel to the FOP and the FOP leadership for having the patience to stick through this very lengthy negotiation to get to the contract that is presented before you. And that brings up the other point and some context for this contract. The alternative to reaching an agreement, to the city and the union reaching an agreement, would be arbitration. In arbitration, the city would be involved in a lengthy and probably costly process, which would not result in anywhere near the pension reform that exists in this contract, as well as the health insurance savings that the city is going to realize from this contract. We would not have anything like the contract that is before you if we went to the alternative to reaching an agreement with the union, which would be arbitration. That's just some context in terms of what we were dealing with as we went through the process of negotiating this contract with the union. As has been stated, the pension reform is very substantial and sets a baseline for future contract negotiations, both with the union and other unions, and does carry through as a baseline. If in the unfortunate event the city, once this contract is over, is unable to reach an agreement with the police union on a new contract, if it were to go to arbitration, 13.5% pension contribution is the baseline from which an arbitrator would work. I have nothing further, but am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Solicitor. Commissioner Parry?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the council, I'll be quick because Larry and others have already expounded on the significance of this proposal for your approval, the financial impact, the requirement of shoring up, starting to shore up our pensions, or said, Councilman Taylor touched upon the department being in the lower percentile competitively in salary. This changes that. It is the busiest police department in this state, and they're compensated adequately with this contract. They're not going to be the top 5, but they're certainly going to be the top 10 departments in this state at the end of this contract, and perhaps in the 6th spot, depending on how you compare police departments in their contracts as well. So they should be, I appreciate the council's consideration. When people look at it and say, you got a big salary raise, well, it's offset by a lot of contributions that we know need to go into our pension. So I applaud that. And what hasn't been spoken about, it tightens up some other operational things that the colonel and the department knew needed to be changed with some staffing requirements for, our posts in the city, and detail. We've been losing details in this. We can't put police officers. We don't have enough police officers, and the construction is too great. So I get irritated when I see neighboring towns in the city of Providence doing construction details. We lose money when that happens, administrative money, but we just don't have the bodies to fill. And so this also tackles our ability to use retirees in those details that don the uniform of the Providence Police and with a police car in our city. So a lot of positives, but it didn't come easy in negotiating this, why it took so long. And I too will applaud both the FOP executive board and their council for staying at it. It was, stopped, and as most know, negotiations are difficult, and there's uncertainty whether you're going to come to the end of it and come to an agreement. And I just respectfully ask this committee to analyze this, and I ask for your support in this tentative agreement. And if it comes out of committee, council for its support as well. It's good for the city and it's good for the police department.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chief Clements?
Mr. Chairman, fellow council, good to see everyone, staff as well. I ask for full support on this contract unequivocally, resoundingly. I endorse it internally as the chief of this department. I say it all the time, for the type, the scope, the volume of work we perform, we're just different in so many ways than any police department in nearby parts. We just are. Our challenges are greater. The type of work we perform, it's just different. And, where need be, I constantly praise the men and women of the Providence Police Department for that type of work. I'd be remiss if I didn't commend the finance team, Larry, your team, the mayor's team with Nicole, the solicitor's office with Jeff, the entire negotiating team, Mike Monday on the executive board. This was long, but it was productive in so many ways. It was professional. There were times that it broke down, but was picked back up again and never got too far off track. It addressed some very necessary needs for the city and for the men and women. It brings them from the lower tier of salary and benefits to somewhat near the upper tier going through 2023. With this contract addresses financials, some of the necessary, as the commissioner points out, detail language, some very ancillary language on beats and car posts in the city that are helpful. And we also up the age to 65, which I think is a benefit to the city for longstanding members. Most importantly, it has pension reform immediate impact. It has pension reform long-term impact. The likes of, there's a few on this panel who may have seen the first crack at that, and that wasn't since back in 1992, 1995. I think you saw some changes at that point on the COLA and with pension contributions, but nowhere near this historic agreement for the city and for the union members. So I commend everyone. There's some real significant changes in this agreement, and I move for passage in a strong way.
Thank you, Chief. At this time, any other further comments or questions by committee members, council members?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair?
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mancini?
Thank you,
No,
Mr. Chair.
I don't know
Oh,
if
sorry.
Leader Ryan wanted to say anything.
A second.
I apologize.
Mr. Mancini, hang
Go
on.
ahead.
Vice Chair, do you have questions, Vice Chair?
Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I wanted to follow up with Chief Clements on the minimum manning count in this agreement. What is that number? Total number?
Yeah, that the minimum manning for shifts and patrol, is that what you're referring to, or the minimum manning with the total organization workforce of us?
Total organization workforce, sir.
No, I don't think that number has been addressed in the CBA. We're certainly looking for movement and critically need the academy to move forward with plus 50 to go from the present 413 that we're at. And by the time that 50 graduates, would be somewhere around 460 or so, 450, depending on
So
how.
what about minimum manning at a shift level?
So minimum manning has not been changed, and however, the minimum manning in the police department at the witching hour, if you will, is 27. So all that the city is required to put out for uniformed men and women of the Providence Police Department on a Friday night in the middle of the summer at 2 o'clock in the morning when the city is bursting and bustling is 27. There are 32 car posts in the city. So I bring that to your attention. Oftentimes we have far more than that. But when you speak about minimum manning, the minimum manning number in the CBA is 27. There's varying numbers during the day shift. That number is as low as the lower 20s. Obviously, the busier shifts are 3 to 11 in the early portion of the outlast, the 11 to 7 shift. So the busiest hours in the police department are 3P to 3A, 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. And that's when our numbers on minimum manning are required to be the highest. And then they drop significantly after 3 a.m., rightfully so.
So Chief, thank you for that answer. We spoke, one of my colleagues talked about pay scales and wages in comparison to other municipalities. You know, obviously, and you articulated in your own comments that we are challenged as a capital city in ways that other municipalities throughout the state are not. So how do you feel about the wages that are presented in this agreement in comparison, or how does it compare in your mind with other municipalities? Obviously, it's lower. How do you feel about that?
It's lower, and it was starting to become demoralizing, in all honesty, for the type of work that we do. And so this, with passage, is a proud moment. How do I feel? Extremely gratified and satisfied and happy that we'll be put in the upper tier, rightfully so, deservedly so. And, this puts us in the ballpark, and I get it. You have to consider the tax base. And even though our volume is far greater than Cranston and Warwick, we still have to consider what's fair for the entire city. No doubt, the men and women of the Providence Police Department should be the #1 paid and have the best benefit package. But this still will not put us at the very top, but puts us where at least they should be in that upper tier. So it's gratifying to see with passage, this is where this will put us.
Great. That's an important wage level is an important component as well to maintain the force. We don't want to be in a position where we're training officers and they're leaving for higher paying jobs in the suburbs.
And we just saw the very beginning of that, where it could have become an issue. And that's important because for years in the Northeast, you saw very good retention levels in policing. And certainly in the Providence Police, you saw outstanding retention levels. When people were hired by the Providence Police Department, they did at least 20 years. And we just started to see the very beginning of people starting to look elsewhere for that reason. So I think this will be helpful in that realm of the discussion in maintaining or retaining the workforce. It's important because departments around the country, if you're paying attention, it's a huge issue. I mean, there's billboards in the Southwest and out West, they're begging to recruit. And also they're having difficulty retaining because many of those officers are switching to other higher paying or more attractive departments.
Thank you very much, Chief, for your answers. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for your service to the city of Providence. You are a remarkable leader, and the challenges that your department has faced in this past year have been tremendous. And I thank you for always for showing a great leadership style and recognizing the needs of your officers and representing them well. Thank you.
Accepted humbly on behalf of the department, and I'll say, the men and women, they love their city. They do. And I think you saw that in 2020.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're right, Shane.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Narducci?
Thank you.
Councilman Narducci?
Very brief. Two things. I think the morale in the department was at a very low level in the past couple of years, especially with all the negativity police officers across the country are getting. I think this contract kind of speaks and shows that the support from us is there for the men and women of the department. And I really think this is going to be a morale booster. The other thing, it's kind of scary, and I think it's something we should look into going into the future. As the chief said, your busiest hours are like from 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. And we roughly have 27 officers out there on the Manning with 7 districts. That's not even a full 4 officers per district. And with the summer months coming, that's something I think we should all be very concerned about. And I do want to ditto Leader Ryan's remarks to the chief and the full department. The men and women of the Providence Police Department deserve a lot of respect, a lot of courage from us, and I'm just proud to have them serve our city. And Chief, as always, thank you very much for your availability to us as council people, and thank you. I'm looking forward to supporting this agreement.
Thank you, Councilman Narducci, and just in fairness to the conversation. Someone's, I'm sorry, I don't think it's on my end, there was an echo, but in fairness to the conversation, and you're right, I think it will be very helpful with the morale, and we appreciate the support, we really do, from the leadership of their city in the form of the council and the mayor's office and the law department and the finance team. We really do. But in fairness to the number 27 and the minimum manning, just to be clear, that's the minimum number the city is required to put out. There are times when that number is far greater, but that number 27 is extremely low. And when we know we have issues going on, we strive not to keep it that low, because that becomes a safety issue for members in the community and members on the police department. That's a low number. When this city is, like when we're in non-COVID times, you just drive through downtown, forget it. I mean, people come from all over New England. They come to Providence for good reason, because it's a vibrant city. But if we're only at 27 on a Friday night, we're in trouble, because it's the nightclub scene, the restaurant scene, and in all sectors of the city. It's not only downtown, it's not only Federal Hill, it's Broad Street, it's the waterfront, it's Thayer Street, it's Hope Street. It's a busy city.
Thank you, Chief. That, I think we got a good look-see in what this proposed contract is, some more details and some more understanding of it. I'd ask my council colleagues if you have any specific questions. Why don't you phone to the internal auditor, then she can get them answered by the panel of folks here, and then hopefully get them answered to you before the public hearing and the next finance meeting. And we can go from there, all right? I want to thank you for participating. Thank you, Mr. Mancini, City Solicitor, the Commissioner, Chief, of course. Thank you very much for your help and giving us understanding of this proposed contract. And Chief, of course, Chief, keep up the good work. You know, we're all proud of you. And of course, the Commissioner and Mr. Solicitor, Mr. Mancini, keep up your good work. You're doing your job and helping this city go through these difficult times. So I want to thank you all with that. Anything else at this time to continue this matter to the motion to continue this item?
Motion to continue.
Second.
By Vice Chair, second by Councilman Taylor. Discussion, all in favor, aye. Carried. Once again, thank you, everybody. Motion to adjourn at this time.
Motion to adjourn.
Hold on 1 second.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, I didn't get a chance to. Did Larry get my answer about the
Mr. Mancini?
about the recreation?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I did write to the HR director again this morning, asking him to provide me that answer, hoping that I would have it for you this evening. I did not get a response while the meeting began, Councilman, but I will follow up again, and I will have that provided to yourself and the internal auditor. But I did write to him officially.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, if I might just say, I was remiss, and I too wanted to thank the FOP leadership for their work on this contract, and also the solicitor who staffs these finance committee meetings, worked side by side with Solicitor Dana, Ken Shiverini, outstanding work as he is known to do on labor contracts. So I think that's fair for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mancini. And we also want to give our thank you to the FOP leadership, of course, with Kenny Cheverini as usual. Mr. Cheverini knows that, at least this council, at least this committee, knows how much we respect his work and what a great job he's been
By all
doing
means.
for the process since the beginning, so I can tell you that. With that, I think we have the motion. Do we have a second?
Motion made and seconded, sir.
By
Second.
Vice, second by Councilman Taylor. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all. Be well.